Daniel Kaul, welcome to the Conscious Podcast. It's almost impossible to know where to start with our conversation because you do so much. But I think the place to start and the place where we first connected was with your conservation travel company, which is NatureKate. And NatureKate itself is pretty obvious what you're trying to do there, nature and education. Tell me a bit more about the philosophy behind this travel company.
First of all, thanks a lot, Philippa, for inviting us. You're right. Netucate means we want to combine and being a matchmaker between nature and education. So what we want to create are meaningful conservation experience for our guests, students, volunteers abroad. So we strongly believe that we want people to experience real conservation issues on the ground, and to learn about it, so that they, in the end, in the best case, become ambassadors about species, about nature. So that's our perfect world scenario.
So we will explore that a little bit more in a bit, but where does it all stem from for you personally?
So I founded Netucate 10 years ago. I worked quite a long time in the IT industry, but I was a volunteer by myself in when I went to university. So I worked in different national parks in the US, and it was, I would say, still one of the best times in my life. And when I was not happy in the IT industry, I thought about what did I like in my life until then. And then I thought I want to create opportunities for people who would like to connect with nature and to work with nature. And that's how it started. Um, and that was our first project in the Western US. And then we became more present in Southern Africa. And nowadays we do support NGOs on 5 continents. But Southern Africa is definitely where I lost a bit of my heart and where I always return. But we have other projects in other areas of the world which are just stunning, and we want to support small grassroots NGOs in sending people who pay for it, who give their work power in the project for the conservation effort. Which is, in our opinion, a perfect match, actually.
So, Daniel, for those of us who are not quite sure, explain what an NGO is.
An NGO is a non-governmental organization. So often the ones we work are little grassroots organizations who are not for profit, but who don't get big fundings. Like you have big ones like WWF is one example everyone knows, or maybe others, but usually the small ones don't get big fundings from governments or even from other companies. So that's usually our partners, that we work with small grassroots NGOs.
So when we're saying NGOs, we're thinking along the lines of charities, but often small ones.
Yes. So I we all of most of our partners are very, very small NGOs, and some of them have one, two, three staff members, maybe the bigger ones 10 to 20, but it's not the big NGOs from TV or media.
You talked just briefly there about the benefit that you had with connecting to nature. And connecting is actually a huge word in your life, isn't it? I mean, that's really at the heart of everything that you're doing, and all of the things that we'll talk about later. But the core of it is connection with nature. Why is that? What does that do for us, do you think?
That's a very tricky question, and I think we often try to put it in a way where we explain when you feel your blood is running through your veins. Look, there are some occasions, some events when you feel alive, and often that is in wilderness, in combination with animal sightings, for example, so that people can step outside their comfort zone. Even that's such a much used term, but it's true, and that people grow. And for us, the part what we want to achieve is that we understand the adventure level of all of our guests, because each adventure level is different. So For some people, it's a massive adventure to travel to Portugal with a train and to support our wolf project, for example. For other people who maybe worked in Congo before as a guide, that wouldn't be the biggest adventure. So we need to adjust those um, expectations and see what fits from our portfolio, pretty much, if I would speak in a business term. But yeah, just bringing people into nature, that they feel empowered to take that step. And yeah, I think that's the best way to learn, and it's an absolute brilliant way to learn.
And an inherent part of our human experience is, I mean, even you're a huge advocate of green spaces, for example, in urban environments, aren't you? So it's just as an important part of our human experience.
100%, yes. I think um, not only since COVID, but I think we were shown and remembered that the well-being of nature can't be separated of the well-being of ourselves. So it is connected. And um, of course, COVID was a big, yeah, big shocker for the whole world, for different industries. But on the same side, I think it was a bit of a reminder for us that we need to question what happened in the last decades and maybe how to rebuild better, or how to, yeah, to invent new stuff, not only in the tourism industry in general. And I think the value of nature, in my opinion and in my hope, becomes more important now. And let it be in tourism, or let it be even in the financial sector, if we would go towards carbon footprints or biodiversity credits, there is a good movement in the right direction, in my opinion, but it is a long way. But I'm very positive about that.
COVID seemed to bring it back to basics, to a sense of self and a sense of, okay, as individuals, what are our needs? What are our fundamental needs? And it was that, I think, dawning on most people who had become very disconnected, for lack of time, for the bombardment of everyday life, for all of the screens, all of the reasons, that to get back out in nature is something that we do need as humans, right?
Yes, that's absolutely right. I think the part of disconnecting with the modern world offers us opportunities to listen more to our inner self, if that makes sense. So we, for one example, 2 weeks ago, we did run a trip in the Kalahari, and our instructors, our guides, asked the guests to leave their mobile behind in the lodge. And for all of them, even they don't have signal, it was such a burden to leave the mobile in the lodge. And then they try to find excuses, but yeah, pictures or like an alarm clock. We said, no, you don't need it. And we had people from London, we had people from, yeah, big cities, and for them it was completely a massive step out of their comfort zone, which is so interesting to see, because you can't use it. You have the sun, which tells you pretty much how late it is, and that's the only thing you really need. And after that,
I'm already thinking,
it
oh
was,
yeah, but the torch. The torch would be really useful. Like we are so attuned to what's on that
yeah.
beam.
Then we asked them to bring a head torch, so that this is not an excuse. But they all come back absolutely on a different level. I mean, I don't want to go into this spiritual direction, but they could reconnect with themselves again, which often doesn't happen if you work your normal life in your job and you're just functioning. We would say you're just functioning. You're going to work, back, going to work, weekend, and I think sometimes you need a break, and that's what you referred to COVID. I think COVID was a bit of a break for us and for nature as well, and good and bad, because during COVID we saw how important ecotourism is, because the unemployment rate during COVID in certain areas of the world where tourism is a massive income for the local communities, it was just a disaster. So guides were forced to poach, to kill animals, and yeah, it was on that side. It was really bad for some areas of the world, of course.
And I mean, we can't avoid it. You do often work with indigenous communities, and where you say, well, I don't want to go down the spiritual route, actually, so many indigenous communities do. That's part of living in nature.
Yeah.
The philosophy of living in nature very often is kind of, it's a spirituality and a practicality all bound into one lifestyle. And I think, I mean, I know that you work with the San people, for example, in Africa, in places like Namibia. Is that right?
And Botswana, yes.
And Botswana. So, what
Yeah,
can we learn from those people? And don't get me wrong, because I also have my own set of experiences, and I know that it's very easy to get wrapped up in it's such an idyllic, simple, peaceful, harmonious
yeah,
life. And it's not. It's very often, a life in wilderness with none of the support systems that we love is a harsh and sometimes very aggressive and violent life.
100%. I think what we can learn is to worry about the important things and not to worry about stuff what we can't influence or what is not important. And I said that before with the spiritual part, because usually if we speak with clients or even with partners, and if we mention that often before they travel with us, they don't understand that part. But if they are with us on the ground in the wilderness, then they start to understand. And it depends, of course, on the person how open you are to that topic. But I think you're learning from, in that case, the Sun people, it's just how to live with nature and how to value nature because it's crucial for them. And that is something what we lost, in my opinion, over decades. um, and if we will speak about conservation, is that we need to be careful of what we want to use and how long we can use it. And that's the pretty much the bottom of conservation, that we need to save and protect the environment and be good to nature.
Yeah. There's also, I mean, it does again tie in slightly with the spirituality element of it, but the sense of how important do you think it is to us to have that sense of awe? I mean, the sense of awe to me aligns so well with what I experience from the natural world.
No, I think it's, yeah, very important. I think it's crucial that people, if they go into places like that, and you just go back to basics and to understand the basic needs. And that is usually when we go on our trips and we live with in nature, and that we live pretty much with the sun. So early morning, we stand up, and early evening we go to bed again. But that is, it sounds simple, but it's not, because you will reflect on a lot of personal issues. You will have time to think about stuff what you don't have time for. So I think it's very important. Yes.
Yeah. And a sense that something's bigger than us. So that's
Yes.
very much then, the philosophy is about reconnecting with nature, reconnecting with a lifestyle that's much more aligned with nature and the natural world. How does the practicality of that work with your company? Because we're very used to come on a lovely eco tour, that'll cost you 20 grand. And we'll put
100%.
you up
No.
in a solar powered lodge, and that's what that is. But this is not what you're doing, is it?
Um, our core business is not that. But now is the but. I think if we have a product like what you just explained, like having a 5-star deluxe lodge in the desert with a swimming pool, and that you can order every drink you want, even if it's from wherever you can think about. If it is it a bad form of tourism if we are able to protect that place, that country, or that species because of the money people pay for that? So if we wouldn't, or whoever the operator wouldn't offer a product like that, wouldn't get the income, and so the people who live there don't get the income, we couldn't save the space. Um, I think it's a very, very complex debate to have on tourism and what's good tourism and what's not good or ugly tourism. I think some parts are clear, which we never would do. But we want to create experiences for people who are usually more basic. You are correct. So when you go with us into a camp, you won't have a pool or a proper shower. You will have a bucket shower. But on the same side, we need to have solar electricity most of the time because there are people who need to be in contact. And if you want to get clients who are running a business, for example, it will be very hard to explain to them that you can't use your mobile for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, because some of our trips are much longer than normal trips. So we need to find a middle way. And I think it's the same topic with flights, which is always a very difficult topic in our industry. Um, and I don't want to be the judging part who says that's a good tour or that's a bad tour. I think it's very, very difficult to do so, if that makes sense. And I'm not the biggest fan of laws or certificates who or which regulate the market. I'm a bigger fan of changing the demand and changing the mindset of people who pay for something, because then the market will change automatically. Um, Especially in Western Europe, changing laws or changing regulations or building new certificates is a long process. And often for me, it's a greenwashing tool, to be completely open. And I like changing mindsets. I like when people understand we should stay longer in one place and not take a flight from Berlin to London. Or if in the brain of the people makes click, it's for me much, much more worse than if we would have laws about that.
Right. I understand. So, in terms of making travel sustainable, which is what really at the heart of your challenges, isn't it? It's a kind of
100%.
decision, 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 decision. There's no overall blanket right way, wrong way, black or white, I'm gathering. And it has to be business. It has to, even conservation has to work as a business, which
100%.
is brutal. And so we come on to another topic, which I know that you're really quite smart with, which is the idea of canned hunting.
Yeah.
So for those of us who don't know what that is, actually I do, but can you explain what exactly I'm talking about when I say canned hunting?
Um, so that's one of the parts. Since the beginning of Netucate, we said we do not promote any projects where the project partner or organization will do breeding of predators or elephants or like big game. In Southern Africa, canned hunting and the whole chain with petting lion cubs to walking with lions to canned hunting, it is an industry which is massive. So it would start that they would have a breeding facility where they take away the newborn cubs from the mothers after 2-3 days, which of course is way too young. Then they will have tourists, either day tourists or long-term volunteers who pay a fortune to stay there, and they put the whole thing under the umbrella of conservation. They said, "Oh, the mother was killed," or "We found that cub somewhere, and now we need to take care about it." And then
And
it
to
will be
be clear,
rewilded.
these animals are captive. There's no
They are
get.
captive.
There's no,
Yes.
even if
No.
it's a huge area, it's a fenced area with only a
And
certain amount
often
of
it's
other
not huge
animals.
areas. Yes. Yes. Sorry to interrupt you, but yes, they are captive. Um, and often they explain to international volunteers who don't know better, that they will be released into the wild when they are grown up. But at least the scientists and the NGOs we work together with in Southern Africa um, reported to me that there's not one case about a hand-raised lion which was rewilded again successfully. So, um, as I mentioned, so volunteers pay money for raised lion cubs with milk bottles, and then once they're getting a bit older and more dangerous, then there are tour operators who sell daily activities or like for 1-2 hours activities where you can walk with a lion, so that there's one person walk with you with a stick and with a semi-adult lion, and just like from common sense, it's not the best idea to walk next to a lion, and so it is dangerous, and it's never ever in the as a benefit for the animal, of course. Um, and then at a later stage, especially with male lions, if the mane is getting big and they are grown ups, then they sell lions for hunting, for trophy hunting. So there are operators, they have like an online catalog where you can choose the lion you want to shoot, and then you pay X amount of dollars for shooting a lion. but it's not a real hunt because it's not in the wild, and it is a fenced area, often not a big area, and sometimes the lions are somehow tranquilized, so they're not really fit. So it's an easy kill, and then you can take the trophy home. And often after that, the bones from lions will be sold to Asian countries um, for traditional medicine use. So the money they make out of one lion from being a cub, volunteers, walking with lions, then hunting, like trophy hunting, it's just massive. And then on top, you sell the bones. Um, and for us, it was from the beginning, and I think we were the first operator in Germany who officially said we will never ever promote a project like that, and we don't promote any breeding projects, because we don't believe in rewilding animals like lion, leopards, etc. if they are hand raised by humans, because they always will relate humans to food. And then if you put them into a national park, it will be a danger for the animal and for the people. So yeah, canned hunting is definitely a topic. It became better. It became much more um, communicated in the public, so more people are aware of that. But even nowadays, still we get inquiries from young kids, doesn't matter from where in the world, who ask us, I want to join a lion project. And then we are already aware and ask, what do you mean with a lion project? And then they said, yeah, we want to cuddle lion babies. So we said, we are not the right person. And then we explain why you shouldn't do it. And most of them then say, okay, thank you, we didn't know about that. So they learned a bit, then they do research, they maybe watch Blood Lions, which is a documentary about it, which is very good to learn about it, and then they decide to join a different path. But even some of them say, I don't care, I just still want to join them. And then we say, okay, we are not the right partner and you shouldn't do it, but we can't help, of course. So. But you have other, it's not only lions, of course that's a quite popular example, but you have similar examples with elephants. Um, so what we do is we try to um, not actually try. We don't promote any projects where you have direct interaction with wild animals. So where you can ride an elephant, where you can play with an elephant, where you can paint with an elephant, where you can play football with an elephant, and that all exists, is nothing what we want to promote. What we are aiming for is, we want to promote real conservation research. So if you go abroad with us, you most likely will collect data, put data into the system, and learn about behaviors of animals, let it be wild dogs, whale sharks, or elephants.
So talk to us about some of the projects. Talk to us about some of the opportunities that volunteers get. And even down to, I'm excited to see, even down to becoming a ranger.
Yes. So from the volunteer side, what we promote are most of the time NGOs who do run research projects in a country, in a place, in a region. Sometimes only at one site, and in some cases in different sites in the country. And we often partner with them and want to show them a different way of income, a different way of funding. And then they start an ecotourism or volunteer project where they invite people from overseas to join the research work. And then you collect data, you work on topics like human wildlife conflict, which is all over the world one of the biggest issues in conservation. Um, that you work with rangers, that you work with local communities to protect animals in the end. Most of the time, endangered species. Um, and depending on the project and depending on the regulations in each country, you can stay up to usually 12 weeks. And we often have people who do like a gap year or a sabbatical, and between jobs, or they're not happy in a job and they want to travel, and then they stay longer, combine a couple of projects, um, and support the work, support the groundwork, and be on the ground and understand real conservation, the issues and the benefits of conservation work, which is not always fun. And you will see the challenges small NGOs are facing in the field. And of course, you see sometimes crucial stuff. If you find a rhino or a poached elephant, it will change your life. And in my opinion, seeing the positive side, I know so many people now who went with us in conservation projects and that changed their life in a positive way. So, for example, one project we support in Namibia, it's a project who does research of desert elephants. And it's a combination between data study, like collecting data of the elephants, and working with the local community, so protect the water infrastructure. Um, and they come home and they run uh, campaigns here in Germany to get fundings for that NGO, which is a dream, which is absolutely amazing. And it's just a small change, but it means so much for small NGOs and for the people. And that's why I said in the beginning, we see ourselves as a matchmaker between people who want to experience something new and learn about topics like conservation and to give NGOs a different way of fundings.
And people who want to do something. I mean, we talk so much about feeling helpless in this kind of sphere of our lives. You know, these are huge issues, global issues facing us, and so often we just feel powerless. We don't know what to do. You know, but your volunteers are everyone from, as you say, gap years to people just wanting to find more meaning and purpose in their life and taking a year away from work. Or, but how? I mean, does it have to be a year? Can you just
No.
go for a few weeks and still have a meaningful experience?
100%, yes. You can do short term stays. Of course, then we would always try to have it in a project which is close to your country where you live in. Otherwise, 100%, you can support an NGO 2 weeks, 4 weeks. It doesn't need to be that long. But nowadays, and it changed since we started NetUK 10 years ago. So back then, we had 18, 19, 20-year old doing after school like a gap year. That was our main market. Now, which is very interesting, the average age of our clients is older than 30 now. And we have a lot of people who are not happy in their normal life and who need a break, and then they either find a way with the company where they're working at to get like 6 months off or 1 year off, or they quit their job and then they just want to have time in nature, and that relates what we discussed earlier, want to rethink about their life and where they want to go and what's my passion, and yeah, looking for meaningful stuff in their life. And yeah, we have nearly 70% of our clients are female, which is very interesting as well. Um, the other question you asked me earlier about those ranger courses and field guide courses, we do in Southern Africa and in Canada, and one in Asia actually. So you go there from 2 weeks until up to 12 months, and you learn. You have assessments. Depending on how long you stay, you will learn how to handle a rifle, how to walk in the bush, and you will get official certificates that you would qualified enough to become a guide. But we don't want internationals taking away jobs from South Africans or locals in Namibia or Botswana. So what we did in the past and what worked out quite well, that some of our students who finished those courses either work for big tour operators in Europe and bring tourists from Europe to those places, and then we still work with local guides, or work as a translator in a lodge. So our aim is to get more tourists, so that we need more staff on the ground and not to take jobs away from local communities. But those courses are absolutely brilliant, and I did one of them, which were 2 months long. And yeah, since then I'm returning to Southern Africa twice or three times every year at least. So it changed my life. I saw the first time elephants in the wild, and that was a big game changer. Yes.
What did you get from that?
I think, of course, the
About that
educational
experience.
part.
What happened when you? What was it
Um,
like?
I mean, if I tell you the whole story, it would probably be too long for that podcast. But I was
Condense it
only
a
meant
little
to
bit
be
then.
there. Okay, I was only meant to be there for 10 days, to check the camps out, to see the course structure, and then I was supposed to travel to a different place. But then I arrived. I saw, as I mentioned, my first elephant in the wild. And then I decided to stay. I skipped all other travel plans and I did the full course. And after the time in North America, which I mentioned earlier, that was probably a highlight of my life, definitely a highlight of my life. It completely changed the way I think about Netucate. Some of the people I met there are now either part of Netucate or one of our most important business partners and friends. And I learned more about nature and about myself. Um, yeah, and just the way how education works in the bush and the mix between education, empathy, collaboration, it was just mind blowing. And it's still one of, I mean, I shouldn't say that, but one of my favorite products we have, because it changed your life, in my opinion. If you go there and have experiences like seeing wild dogs on a regular base and not only one day. So if you stay, let's say, 2 months in one camp and you see the same animals, you see the behavior of the animals, you see maybe a newborn or on a kill or whatever, it's a completely different way of learning and connecting to species. Um, and what I mentioned earlier, I think, and I have the strong belief, if you want to protect something, you need to discover it, you need to understand it, to learn about it, and then to cherish it. And that's what happened with me with elephant and white dogs, for example. So it's absolutely incredible how much they became focus of Netucate now, and how much we try to support NGOs who are working in that sector. And of course, now I want to show my kids elephants in the wild.
Of course.
Um, yeah, that's happened pretty
That's
much.
what we do as parents. That's exactly what we do. And
Yeah,
I mean, we've talked a lot, kind of by default, obviously, the world's a big place. Our conservation issues are all over the world. Not all of us are going to get the chance or have the money to go and see elephants and wild dogs in the wild or any of those amazing things. And yet, I very much feel that all of these issues are all of our responsibility. You know, it's not just a national thing anymore, conservation, is it? You know, we see different countries with their different challenges, but that's not separate from us anymore. And I know that you've been working a lot in the Okavango Delta, for example, as a classic example of a situation, a place that's threatened because of something that's happening in another country. Can you speak of that a bit?
yeah, I think I 100% agree. And for me, conservation is a global thing. And many issues we facing in one country or with one topic, we have the same issue in completely different areas. It's just you need to maybe change the species or change some of the environment, but in the end, it's the same issue. And in Botswana, yeah, Botswana is a very special place for all of us at Netucate. And as probably everyone knows, Botswana, with the Okavango Delta as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, it's very important for the tourism in Southern Africa.
And it's
So
a
um,
huge, huge wetland, isn't it? A vast wetland, the Okavango
it's
Delta.
a yeah, it's a massive inland delta. So some of it does have permanent water, and some of it only gets occasionally with a flood water. And usually the water is coming from Angola through Namibia and then to Botswana. And this year is a good example. We've been in the delta at the southern border of the delta just 1 month ago, 1.5 months ago, and it's a really dry year. So the flood won't arrive this year to that area, which is for the animals and in the end then for tourism an absolutely nightmare. So we didn't
And
see one
we're
zebra,
talking elephant. We're talking. Tell us
all
about the
animals.
wildlife there, because the diversity is extraordinary. It's one of the
Yeah,
most diverse places on earth, right?
it's definitely a biodiversity hotspot, the inner delta, and the parts where only occasionally comes the floods arrives, the animal move. So this year we didn't see one zebra, we didn't see one wildebeest, which is very very special that you don't see them. And 2 years ago, when we've been there at the same time of the year, water everywhere. So we did use canoes. We did see water birds. It was a completely different scene. And as you mentioned, like cross-border or conservation across borders. So the impact of certain decisions taken in different countries will impact the Okavango Delta. Let it be oil drilling, let it be dams, let it be other countries who want to regulate maybe the amount of water which comes into Botswana. And of course, for the whole biodiversity, it will change. The whole structure of the area will change. And the income for the country will change because Botswana is diamonds, beef, tourism. And if you would take away the Okavango Delta out of Botswana, tourism will change drastically. And a lot of people who live in Botswana and who work in the industry are very concerned about the situation at the moment. We had years which are very dry, but this year was very, very dry, and we don't know yet about next year. But we didn't have a good flood, and we didn't have a lot of rain, and that has impact of everything, in my opinion, in the country, and in the job for jobs, of course. But if you've been to the Okavango Delta and you've seen the beauty, the biodiversity, just to imagine that that will extinct or move away, it's very crucial.
What's
But
happening? I mean, there's been some headway, excuse the kind of pun, but in terms of Angola and water supply into the delta, hasn't there? There has been progression. This is just not a disaster completely in terms of international affairs.
yeah, so it is definitely that there are new dams in Angola, and in my opinion, there are still dams in construction, so that the water level naturally will be lower. And I mean, as I mentioned, we don't want to point fingers. We don't want to say Angola is not in charge of their own water because the water is coming from there. But it has massive impact of other countries. Or that there was a point in Namibia that there was a company having the rights to drill for oil. And that was in the same area where the water will go to the Okavango Delta. And I mean, everyone can understand what happens if something goes wrong there. And if we would get oil into the Okavango Delta, we've seen that in other areas in the world, what the outcome would be. So that's exactly what you said, that decisions which are taken across borders, over borders in different areas will impact the conservation efforts in a different country. And not only in that area of the world, in many areas of the world. And so I think we need to see conservation on a global scale. And we need to try to get an understanding that, in my opinion, conservation is only working if it's related to money, to financial impact. Without a financial benefit for people who live there, for other companies, conservation won't work in the long term. Um, and there are topics where companies or organizations are working on, and I mentioned earlier biodiversity and biodiversity credits. I see a lot of potential in that, more than in carbon credits.
Can you
Um,
explain that to us,
I try to keep it very simple because it's an
please?
early stage. There are
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
no, no, not because of you, but it's at an early stage, and there are not a lot of laws or rules about it. But I mean, everyone knows carbon credits, how carbon credits work, and that companies or private person could buy pretty much carbon credits to offset flights or whatever they did as a company, or compensate. And now, as we saw in some examples, that didn't really work, and that counting trees in areas where trees shouldn't be, or where different trees should be, or that trees get removed again, and no one had track or kept track on it, was not the best way how to do it. And now they try, or scientists try to see it in a bigger scale, that biodiversity is a better currency or value, if I can put it in that way, to explain, or to find the status or the healed status of an area. And there are now different ways how to measure biodiversity. There's not one global standard how to measure it. That's a bit of an issue still at the moment. But companies working on that, and government bodies and organizations are working that we get a standard how to measure biodiversity. Um, And then there are financial institutes who want to put a value on, let's say, a square meter, a hectare, or whatever, where people can invest, and that country or that piece of land will be protected, so that we can increase the biodiversity rate or scores of that. And then later it's more worse. So in the end, and you can discuss about it if it's good or not good, that you put a value of wilderness and biodiversity, and that people want to increase wilderness and biodiversity, so their investment gets increased, which is, yeah, you can discuss about it if it's good to put a money value on nature. But I have hopes that we, in doing that, that we can get fundings to rewild places, to protect places, and to create income for communities who are depending on that land. Because it's always easy for us as Europeans to point fingers about conservation issues in different areas of the world. But often we don't understand the whole picture. And if you live from the hand to the mouth, and if you need to feed your kids, you don't care about conservation at that moment. You don't care about the next decade or 2 decades. You care about the now, and you need to bring food to the table. And if we don't create an environment where people who live in those places don't need to worry about the now, and they can think about decades and see an income through conservation, let it be ecotourism, let it be biodiversity credit, whatever it be, I think then conservation won't work. Without the support of the people who own the country or live there, we won't succeed conservation, in my opinion.
So, in one way, the definition of sustainability, sustaining conservation as a business model, is one way to look ahead and make that work for everyone.
Yeah. And it's funny that some people we speak with don't understand why NGOs, people who work in NGOs, get a salary. They said, oh, they should do it for free. I said, okay, that's how we value the work in conservation. So they should work for free. Uh, and I think that's a different or wrong approach. And again, when we started to speak about COVID, I think it will help us to value nature, and it will help us to value people who protect nature and conservation efforts all over the world. And there are conservation efforts which don't go right, and you need to have trial and errors, and then you will find a better way, which is normal. But I think this whole blaming culture and pointing fingers if something goes wrong is not good for the whole conservation sector.
Yeah, makes sense. If we're thinking, oh well, I don't know what I can do. What would be something that you would suggest? I think as we've said before, so many people feel so powerless. Would it be volunteering, or what's something that somebody could do today, if it's not like take a year off and go for a volunteer job and find meaning and purpose that way? Is there a way that we can do that in our everyday lives?
I 100% believe that there are ways to do it. Sometimes it's a bit harder, but if you take your time, put the brake pedal on, and spend time in nature, that's the first step. Just go out in the woods, go out in the forest. Then you can support NGOs from home. So there are ways to help them, for example, to identify species on camera traps, on pictures from camera traps. Um, there are tools online where you can do that. Of course, donations are always a way to do that. But again, in my opinion, you need to start with your own life to think about what's good for you, how to conserve your own life, how to, yeah, become a bit more happy maybe, and then to reconnect with other stuff. And often it is easier if you go abroad, saw elephants, saw whale sharks, whatever it is, and then come back, and then you have that connection. It's easier than, for example, go in a zoo and see a rhino and to connect with a rhino in a zoo. Um, so it's tricky, but I mean, you can start in your garden. You can start in nature in general, um, and yeah, rethink. I think it's a time to rethink a lot of things what we did in the past, and it's a creative time. It's an exhausting time, but it's a very, in my opinion, positive time to just rethink structures, rethink processes in every industry, in every part of the life, actually.
Cool. I'm going to pick you up on that. What do you mean we can go online and help NGOs with things like identifying
Um,
animals? Where can
so
we find
there
out
are,
more about that stuff?
I can send you later some links which you maybe then can post in the notes. So there are softwares and websites where they have thousands of pictures of from camera traps, and they maybe don't have the funding to use AI, and then they need volunteers and to click and say, is it an elephant or is it an antelope? Is it feeding or is it is it running? That's a way how you could support NGOs. And then and even small donations, there are NGO like wish list what they need. For example, they need a new satellite color or they need new shoes for the rangers. There are small NGOs, actually one in UK, who support rangers all over the world in buying them new socks and shoes, which sounds a bit silly, but which is absolutely important for the rangers on the ground. And it's simple things where we can help even without traveling to far away places. But I can definitely send you some links, and
We'd
which
love
then you
that.
can publish. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd love that. Thank you.
And I think another way, maybe just to add that, if that's okay, I think to spread the word. For me, everything starts with education and to learn about stuff. And when you spread the word about endangered species, so that people even watch documentaries, watch David Attenborough, watch the Africa documentary from David Attenborough, or watch others, it will help you to understand issues of conservation, in my opinion, and to be more aware of it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Daniel, for your time this morning. We have covered quite the globe, actually, in our
Yeah.
conversation, and I really appreciate it. Your depth of knowledge is extraordinary, but your passion too shines through in what you do. And so I'm hoping you get lots of volunteers signing up and people wanting to travel with your company. Um, Keep up the good work. It's a tough industry to be in so many ways. The eco tour is the obvious answer to so many problems, but it's not quite that simple. So thanks for sharing some of those complexities with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your hard work and spreading the word. And you're always welcome to join us on one of our trips, Philippa.
I will be sure to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.